Fix your trauma, fix yourself. What an out of the box, exciting topic today for this ECKO Effect podcast. Thank you all for being here. I'm Ellen Kolodziej. I am thrilled to have not only an expert on this topic, but also a friend of mine. Welcome, everyone. Let's welcome Heather Olsen. Heather, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you so much for having me.
And Heather is, I'm going to call her a healer, therapist, just extraordinary person. You wear so many different hats, Heather, but she owns True Healing Center, and it's located in Bensalem, Pennsylvania, Bucks County. And again, I'm just not only a friend of hers, but I am a client, patient. What would you call people that you help, Heather?
I call them clients more than patients.
Okay. Well, I feel like I'm a patient because in a good way, I'm a client. But I found you and I could not wait to do a podcast with you. So this topic today is fix your trauma, fix yourself. And I know trauma sounds like, oh my gosh, PTSD or something, but it's so much broader than that because let's dive into that a little bit. Trauma comes in so many different ways, right? And trauma affects so much of our life. So let's start with that. What are we talking about when we talk about trauma?
So when people come in, they usually come in because something in their life is keeping them from moving forward. Mm-hmm. They're holding on to something from the past, or maybe it's triggered or something that could happen now that's just keeping them from moving forward. And I always say living their best life. So what I do is I look at the core. I have the gift to be able to see your past, your present, your future, but I look at the core of where you're stuck at. Where did it start at in your life? Where did your life, alter? And once I see that, I'm able to see the patterns of everything that you've been through that are now getting you back to that one core trauma trigger that you had a long time ago that you never worked through. And so trauma doesn't have to be anything horrific. It's just something that disrupted your life or altered your life in a way that has changed the course of the life that you thought maybe you were going to have, that now you're here and you might want to change it.
And again, it can come in so many different forms. It doesn't mean you were abused, or it doesn't mean you had this one traumatic incident. It can be something that we don't even think about. And that's what I wanted to do this podcast about and talk to you about. So many people aren't as blessed as I am that I was able to go see you in person. So I want to see if you can help our viewers and listeners understand, first of all, what trauma is and how people can identify it in their own life.
So think of it as anything from, like, I always tell people it can be relationships where you're stuck in the same pattern. I call it same character, different costume, meaning you keep having the same relationships over and over again that are not always healthy, but it's your comfort zone. And you got to find out, why am I comfortable in this toxicity? It can be grief. I deal with a lot of people that are grieving, that have lost people. I also have the ability to communicate with the other side, so they help me to give clarity and closure too. It could be something about how you just feel like you can never get ahead. It can be something about PTSD, where there's something in your life that is constantly triggering you that has happened in the past that you don't remember. But we get to the core of the fact that, okay, you're having a problem with this boss all the time because he represents a father figure that made you feel less than. And that's a trauma response. It could be something as physical, like a brain injury, which I actually had, or like a health issue that can, alter you. So you have to let go of the trauma, or an accident. It could be your childhood trauma that you didn't even realize was affecting your grown up, situations in life. So it could be anything. It can be anything.
Right. And so many people don't know, or they aren't aware of it. But when you point it out, or when you have people think about it, even if they don't get to see you in person, people sort of know what, I'm veering off here, but do most of the trauma, does it mostly, because I know mine did, happen in childhood?
So I have found that majority of the trauma I deal with is from 1 to 7 to 7 to 14, because that's when we are the most conditioned. So I am a believer that every single one of us, when we're born, we're naked, hungry, and trusting. And things that we are taught in those first 1 to 7 to 7 to 14 years can alter our perception and our beliefs going forward. And pretty soon we sometimes challenge what we truly believe, our authenticity of who we are, and what we were told to believe. So even anxiety, which is a term that is used so much now, I believe that that is the first time when you stop believing that innate knowingness of what's best for you and somebody else is kind of telling you how to think, and it's a battle between you. So everything to me comes from some core in the past.
And so how do people recognize it? Even if you're saying you have an issue with a boss or you keep dating the wrong men, right? How do you get through the layers and go back? You know, I'm just going to be honest, and I've talked about this in other podcasts. You know, I had too much responsibility as a child. I was parentified, so I know that about myself. So I know that I'm an A-type personality and put a lot of pressure on myself my whole life and to be, successful or whatever. So how can people get to their trauma? How can they pinpoint?
So that was your trauma.
Mm-hmm.
You had to fit into a mold that you weren't always comfortable with, but it was your survival mold.
Right.
So for you, it's kind of like, I'm tired of having to always do it. And you get that burnout. And that burnout can be a trigger that there's something from the past or something in your life right now that's holding you back, but you can't figure it out because nothing is really different in your life right now. And that's when we go backwards. So it's almost like getting to the core of like the onion and pulling it out, and then the layers fall off. And then you start to go, oh, okay, well, that makes sense. And that's why I was with that person. And that's why I did that, because when I was 5, this happened. When I was 7, this happened. When I was 15, when this happened. When I was 20, this happened. So when it's trauma, it's really not this horrific thing a lot of times. It's more of, my life isn't what I want it to be, and I don't know why I'm stuck. And now that I'm stuck, I'm frustrated. And I always say there's no growth that'll happen when you're comfortable. So when you become uncomfortable and you're frustrated and you're overwhelmed, that's when I'm like, okay, what is it? Let's figure it out. Where did it come from and how do we fix it?
So are there activities people can do? Like, what suggestions do you have? Because this all sounds, I know it works and helps and it's so interesting, but if someone's watching this, what suggestions do you have?
Well, the first thing is you have to ask yourself, what keeps coming up? Mm-hmm. What is the one thing that I'm uncomfortable with? What's the one thing that I'm frustrated with? What is something that I want to change? Then you got to ask yourself, am I in charge of that change? Because if you're not in charge of it and you can't be in control of it, it's probably not something that you can do, but something that maybe is around you that's affecting you. Because you can't, first of all, you can't control anything out of your control.
Right.
So all you can do is you. So then you got to look at everybody around you and say, well, what's bothering you? Because you have to look at the fact that every single situation is unique. Like if you have a loss, like, okay, let's say you have a loss and you can't get past the loss. Sometimes you need to know why you're feeling with that way, but you're also maybe needing to connect to the other side and find out that they're okay. Or maybe you want to know, for me, it's like I'm able to see like almost like what would have happened if they didn't die. Mm-hmm. And then I show you this is why they had to leave, because had they stayed, they would have suffered more than suffering now. So every situation is different. Some of us are parents and our children are triggering our PTSD from our own childhoods, and we didn't even know it affected us until we're raising our kids and we're remembering our childhood and we're getting frustrated and angry at them when it's not them we're mad at, but ourselves for allowing it to happen. So it's really just realizing something doesn't feel right. Something's off, something's uncomfortable, and I'm not the same person I've always been, or maybe I'm starting to become different. I don't know why. So that would be the first thing. An exercise you can do is kind of reevaluate what is making you unhappy. Like writing it down, like why, like, look, I have everything. Like, why am I unhappy? And then that's for people that don't really know why they're feeling it. But a lot of people will come into me and they know that something's wrong. Mm-hmm. Like they're getting a divorce. They have an eating disorder. They had an accident. They have postpartum they can't get past. There's death and grief. So there's so much. I deal with autistic children, and I deal with, parents that have a hard time raising their kids, and relationship issues, and, trauma from, being in the service, even like PTSD. So I deal with everybody and everything. I deal with a lot of people who are going through a lot of dark stuff that want to find the light in their life. So I deal with a lot. I'm known as 7 years of therapy in an hour, because 1 hour session with me is literally like 7 years of therapy. Because of my intuitive gift, I'm able to tap into the core of where it started. Then I'm able to tap into your ancestors. I'm able to tap into your ancestors. I'm able to tap into your family, your friends, whoever it is that's affecting you, and help you understand why. So I'm a little bit different than your average therapist. I'm different than your average psychic. I'm different than your average medium because I do everything in one session.
Right. But again, if people can't get to you, we're going to give all your info and hopefully they can get to you, but you're so busy, it's hard to even get to you. But to go to True Healing Center, you have so many other things that you offer. But when you say to sit with yourself and do a list and think about, because you said most people know what's bothering them, right? Most people know, even if they're not using the term trauma, they know I'm having trouble getting ahead at work. I'm having trouble. I date the wrong men. My kids, I have a bad relationship with my children, whatever it is. Most people, you're saying no. So you're saying write a list of what? I'm just trying to be practical.
Okay, so think of it this way. You want to go to a therapist. You want to go to somebody that is going to help you with whatever you're feeling you're off with.
Right.
So the first thing you want to ask yourself is, how long have I been feeling this way? The second thing you want to say is, when I think of the feeling that I have, who made me feel this way the most in my life? Then you want to go and circle back to, well, where did it start from? And then you can go from where it starts from, and then you can kind of work your way up. I just do all that for you. But you can do it. So it's kind of like you got to ask yourself, okay, if I'm getting a divorce today, who does my spouse remind me of? Okay, why does that bother me? Why is that triggering me? Why is that affecting me? Who made me feel that way in the beginning? And you go all the way back until you figure out where it started from. Why are my kids triggering me? What is bothering me about this? Why is it making me feel this way? And then you look at it and you're like, okay, well, when I was this old, I was never given this. And I'm giving all this and they're not appreciating me. So now I'm frustrated. Okay, grief. You know, everybody holds on to grief. And they hold on to the idea of they would have been happy, they would have been healthy if they didn't die. Everything would be great. And that's called option C for me. And what option C is, an option we don't get. Option A is that they would have stayed exactly how they were or continued to get worse. And option B is that they passed away when they were meant to pass away because they were done and being here was worse than them leaving. Option C is the idea they were miraculously going to get better. Everything was going to be great. That wasn't going to happen that day. And then here you hold on to the hope of something that was never going to happen. And you punish yourself with an idea of fantasy. So if you really think about it, you can't change what's meant to happen to other people. You really can't change what's meant to happen to you at the end of the day. But you can help your journey to be a happy journey to get to the destination which you're meant to get to, which is death, because we're all meant to die.
Right.
I know it sounds horrible sometimes, but our destination is death. So if you're a believer that the day you come into this world is your birth date, the day that you leave is your death date, then the middle of it is your life. And all the things that you're supposed to live, I believe, are already part of us in our contract. So when you're living this contract, if you believe that you already wrote this contract, you wouldn't have set yourself up for failure. And you have to understand that everything happens to get you to where you're supposed to be. Exactly. Like if you were supposed to have children, then you got to, and you know how I'd feel about this. If you're a mom or you're a dad, I believe that children choose their parents, parents don't choose their children. So this is a big thing about a soul contract. So the soul contract sometimes puts you in traumatic situations and bad situations to guide you on your path to get to where you're meant to get to. So there's some depth into, like, so this very deep sometimes about what we talk about. But the general thing is you have to have faith knowing that you're here for your purpose. You're here for your life. You're here for bigger and better. And my job is to help you understand that your hardships are not your identity. They're your story.
I have so many questions. Do most people struggle with that? Do most people have struggle with I'm here for a purpose, a reason? Is that tough for people?
The biggest problem with the word purpose is because everybody thinks they're supposed to have this grandeur purpose. And sometimes your purpose is just to be happy. You got to think of it this way. How many people before you in generations were not happy? They were in survival mode. You know, They weren't allowed to do this. They weren't allowed to do that. Let's say that you come from a very, very traditional family and you don't want to have children this lifetime, you know, and you want to work and you have all these women before you that were always, know, the whole, you know, mother, barefoot, pregnant, weren't allowed to go to school, work, whatever it was, generational. Because I do see this sometimes. And then all of a sudden, you're the kid that doesn't want to do that. So you looked at that and you learned what you didn't want to be, and you were forced to want to have a kid, and you were forced to get married, and maybe you did all these things to make her be happy, and you wake up one day and you're miserable because you never want that life. So that's a piece of it too. But then we have an opposite thing that is happening now, where a lot of girls are being told, get a job, don't depend on anybody, don't do this, don't do that because of the past. And they actually want to be moms at 23 and 24. They want to have their person and their soulmate, and they want to live, in their house, and they want to take care of their husband. And these women are like, no, because they're fearing them in divorce. So it's really interesting to watch what trauma is for everybody, how different it is from one person to another, just from the generational stuff that they went through in their household and who they are today.
Yeah, it's so interesting how things change and how it can affect different generations, right? I just want to circle back on something you said about the children and resentment. And so if you had maybe trauma in your childhood and I'm not articulating it properly, but you feel like you give your kids too much. And then, because I think a lot of parents in our generation, right, I think every generation, you want your children to do better than you did. But we are what the hell, they call us the helicopter parent, right? And so how do you, if that is part of the trauma, how do you stop that? Do you have any tips for parents? If that's part of your story?
Yeah. So I think the biggest thing is a lot of us overcompensated for what we didn't have. Mm-hmm. And we definitely gave our children a voice. We gave them choices and things like that, because when we were raised off of white lies, guilt trips, fear, and expectations, a lot of us, sometimes even shame. And when we would ask a question, it was disrespectful, because if they didn't know the answer, they didn't want us to make them feel stupid. So we had to pretend that we listened to them and believed everything.
Wait a minute, can you say that again? What was the field? Say that line again, the field trip, say it one more time.
Which part?
We were raised on the what? The field trip?
We were raised off of white lies, guilt trips, fear, expectation, and sometimes shame.
So true. Oh my gosh.
And so what happens is that we've overcompensated to give our children such a voice and to give them the things that we didn't have, because financial hardships and things like that. Mm-hmm. So I've lived my whole life being the opposite of what I came from. So my children wouldn't have to deal with what I dealt with. But the problem is that I woke up one day and I was like, oh my God, like, what am I raising? Mm-hmm. They're not appreciative. They're not this or not that. And they were like that, like very early teenage years. And I was like, and I had to back it up and I had to say, okay, listen, I love you, but I don't like how you're acting. And now I need to tell you why I'm being like this. And now I need to teach you consequences. And now I need to teach you boundaries. And now I need to teach you how to do certain things for yourself, because I'm giving you so much more because I didn't have it. I never wanted you to feel the way I felt in my childhood, but now I'm changing you. So it's a hard line that you have to understand what you are looking to give to your children and why. So you want to give them balance and love. And you want to recognize the fact that we never got accountability. In other words, our parents never took accountability for the things that we carried as our fault when it wasn't our fault. Mm-hmm. So the one thing I tell parents is take accountability for the fact that you don't always know. Take accountability for the fact that you might have said something that you shouldn't have said. Or you yelled at them or called them something that maybe you shouldn't have, because we've all gotten to the point where we've said something and we're like, oh my God. I've actually said to myself, I'm like, I think my mother just came out of my mouth, and I promised myself she would never come out of my mouth. So I'll always say, I'm like, listen, guys, I was like, I love you. I have an 18 and 19-year-old. So I was like, I love you. I don't always like you. I said, I love you. I said, and I'm taking accountability for the fact that I shouldn't have said that. It was not the right time, right, the right place. Mm-hmm. But I'm going to be honest with you. And I don't like the word but, because it cancels everything. But I'll say, but I'm going to be honest with you. You made me feel a certain way that made me react that way. Mm-hmm. So if you're going to act this way, this is a reaction you might get. And we talk about the reaction. So I break it down. Me and my kids talk about everything, because I want them to understand that they are humans and they are little people. And even when they were younger, I would say to them, I love you, but I don't like how you're acting.
Do you find that people, I'm older than you, but do you find that people, the Gen Xers, that we tend to have this trauma from our childhood and then we unfortunately pass it on to our kids, or we live with what you're saying? Like, I know I have given my kids way too much and have done way too much for my children because I didn't have much growing up and because I was parentified. So I never wanted my kids to have the childhood I had, even though I love my parents and, if my dad watches this, love you, Dad. But, but you know what I'm saying? I think so many people in our generation had that childhood and had parents that, listen, fend for yourself, kid. And that's why we are so resilient, I think. And I know we're going off on tangents here, but I think we've done our children a disservice. But do you find that so many people, our generation, are dealing with that trauma from our childhood? So then we have done this to our children?
So I am a Gen X also. So I do understand that. And I definitely had a lot of responsibility. I'm the oldest of, my siblings, and I had to take care of them a lot. And the biggest thing with my kids is I actually am divorced. So for me, what I overcompensated the most with was I didn't want them to ever have to deal with the responsibility of two divorced parents. So I overcompensated about making it very, very, very easy for them with that. And by making it easy for them, I made it easy for the person that I got divorced from. And I think that, I've learned over time that I overcompensated everything in my life, people around me constantly, not just my children, but everybody around me, because I didn't want anybody to feel what I felt. So that piece of it, I think, as a Gen X parent, is that we have a love-hate relationship with our childhood. We absolutely loved it because it gave us freedoms that, like we went outside and we didn't come home till 8:00.
Yeah, no cell phones. We have to worry about it. Like, go play.
Well, no cell phones is a good thing. But the reason that we're helicopter parents is because we didn't have cell phones, we didn't have parental guidance, and we don't want our kids to do half the stuff we did.
So true.
The other thing is our world isn't as safe as it used to be in certain aspects, because although we were groomed in certain ways, the social media world grooms them in different ways.
Yeah, we didn't
So we do have to keep an eye on them because we don't know who their predator is. Even though there were predators around us when we were younger, a lot of times we didn't know who they were in different ways because they weren't on the internet. You know what I mean? They were in the face. Like there was not saying that we knew the predator per se, but I'm just saying it was a different way of looking at it. Like we were afraid of the woke van. We were afraid of the guy giving us our candy or the puppy dog. I mean, but that's what we were taught, and that's what the truth was, because that's what we always saw. Nowadays, they hide behind a lot of different screens. And so that's why a lot of parents are afraid, because they don't know that the predator could be pretending to be somebody they're not, and our kid could think it's safe. So that is a different way where the helicopter parent comes in. But again, you have to understand that that's not happening to the majority. It's happening to the minority.
Right. So many interesting things that we've touched on, but if we had to leave people with just a summation of trauma and how to identify it and work on it. Again, we could talk for hours, Heather, but what would you say to people? Because you've done a great job of talking about it, and we could go off on so many other tangents. We could do a whole other podcast, which we will down the line. But what would you leave people with today?
Everybody deserves to live their best life, and holding on to a past that you can never change is self-sabotaging your future.
And if you had to just sum up a couple tips, I know that's so hard to do, but.
So I think the first tip is not living in the past.
Which is hard. I'm just going to be honest. It is.
I'm going to tell you something. And I know I've told you this in sessions.
Yes.
Think about your favorite movie. Okay. And think about the scenes that you can't stand, the characters you can't stand in the beginning of the movie.
Broadcast News, my favorite movie.
Okay. But are there characters and scenes that you can't stand?
Yeah, of course, yes.
Okay. But was it worth watching the whole thing to get to the end?
Absolutely. I love it.
And not only that, but did it make sense why some of the bad things happened to get to the end of it?
Yes.
Now listen to me. Can you go back when you watch that movie every time? Did them scenes ever change?
No.
Ever? Those scenes you don't like, those characters you don't like, do they ever change?
No.
No matter how bad you want it to, and you're screaming at the screen, do they ever change?
Never.
And neither is your past. The only thing you can do is recognize that you are who you are at this very moment, and you have the choice to change anything that you didn't like about then going forward. which means you don't get to do it over, you get to do it differently. And when we live in a past that is unchangeable, and we look at people and we want them to be something they're never going to be, we self-sabotage our future. So when you hold on to the past traumas, the past people who hurt you, the past things that you want to make different, that are never going to change, because the past never changes, you will never be happy. But if you finally realize that this is why it happened and I'm okay with it and I'm going to move on from it and I'm going to make a difference in my life by not letting it have power, then you can heal your own trauma.
I like that. Well, I love it. You don't get a do-over. You get to do differently.
Do it differently.
It's good. My new mantra. I love it. All right, Heather, thank you so much. Where can we find you if people want to check you out and be lucky enough to see you in person or check out True Healing Center? Where can we find you?
So True Healing Center is in Bensalem on 3671 Humeville Road. It is on truehealingcenter.com and on Facebook, Instagram, on True Healing Center. Everything's True Healing Center. I made it very easy, and it's TRU Healing Center. And we have a ton of different people that are there. We have mediums, we have intuitives, we have sound baths. I run workshops on different things. If you can't get a session with me, I do workshops online and in person on all different topics. We have yoga. I have mindfulness for kids. I'm huge about kids and families and helping them get started. I run a men's meetup and I run a women's circle one Wednesday a month, and it's only $10 to hang out with me for like 2 hours.
That's a bargain.
It is my give back, and it's all about talking about all the subjects that we talk about and the spirituality and understanding how to do things. And it's just, I love what I do, and I love helping people, and I love helping people get out of their own way and living their best life.
And you do it so well, and you're wonderful and lovely. And I love talking to you. So thank you so much. You're
Always
the
nice
best.
to see you. Thank you for having me.
Thank you for being here. And thank you all for being here. And please check out my website, ECKO Communications. That's at eccocom.com, ECKO.com. Have a wonderful day and get rid of that trauma.